like most of the reasons startups fail is because you're building something nobody wants.
Yeah.
So I would also, especially like in a B2B thing, I think it's different for consumer, but like maybe consumer, you have to just think ahead and nobody's going to describe the problem well enough for you to build a product like that. Mm-hmm. But in the B2B space, they may not use the right nouns, but the buyer completely understands what they want.
Welcome to Triangle Tweener Talks, a weekly podcast by builders for builders where we explore the startup journey from the idea to the exit and all the lessons in between with an exclusive focus on founders from the Triangle region of North Carolina. Tweener Talks is produced by Earfluence. Now here's your host, serial founder and general partner of the Triangle Tweener Fund, Scott Wingo.
Welcome to this episode of Triangle Tweener Talks, an in-depth discussion with Dusan Babich. This episode is sponsored by Smashing Boxes, a Durham-based lean design-centric digital transformation company, smashingboxes.com. Robinson Bradshaw, a full-service business law firm with a passion for supporting the Triangle entrepreneurial ecosystem. Learn more about Robinson Bradshaw at robinsonbradshaw.com. Special thanks to our friends at Earfluence who produced this podcast. Dusan moved to the Triangle from South Africa, where he started Device Magic and moved to the Triangle with him in 2015. He continued to bootstrap Device Magic here for 5 years until 2020, when he sold Device Magic to a private equity or PE firm. Dusan rolled forward some of his equity and got to enjoy the rare and elusive double exit. So he sold some to private equity, and then later the whole entity was sold, and he got a benefit of that. In addition to a great bootstrapping story, in this episode, Dusan shares some great lessons learned, such as how he learned from an earlier startup that didn't work out. So we always learn a lot more from our failures than our successes. So he shares some of that. His lesson on selling a company to private equity and learning things like the Rule of 40. And then a ton of great founder tips around thinking about distribution, go-to-market, and why he has chosen not to take traditional VC. Finally, he gives us some hints about his next startup that he's working on right now. And now, without further ado, is my conversation with Dusan Babich, founder of Device Magic. You and I know each other, but we always meet each other for 5 minutes at events. So I've, in lieu of a long coffee meeting, I thought, well, let's just get this on the record. So we have our coffees. We're ready to dig in.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here.
I kind of know about you from Device Magic on, but I'd like to go back further. Judging from your accent, you're not from South Carolina or North Carolina.
I'm further south than that, originally. Yes, from South Africa, Johannesburg, originally.
Yeah, so you born there or moved there?
I was born there and moved to the US. It's 10 years ago now. Okay. Well, going on 10 years.
Yeah. So in South Africa, did you do technical school and do work for engineering firms, or like what did you do there? Yeah,
I actually didn't really. I sort of always, I studied mechanical engineering. I was convinced I wanted to do aeronautics or something like that. But then after doing like some compulsory vocational work, I realized there's not really a big industry for that in South Africa at all, which is obvious in retrospect. But I'd always, been fascinated with computing. And when obviously the internet came about, then that's what I'd spend most of my time with. And during college, I started a small like web development business, and then kind of left college and decided I don't think mechanical engineering was for me, and I just started like a IT consulting shop, and then within a couple of years, then did my first actual startup where we raised money, and it was more of a product-based idea.
And that was in South Africa?
That was in South Africa. It was a company called Red 5 Labs, and this is dating me quite a bit now, but at that time, Symbian Nokia was like the dominant smartphone operating system and ecosystem, and Visual Studio and .NET were by far the de facto developer tool of choice, and me and my co-founder had tried to port the .NET framework onto Symbian Nokia devices.
Wow, that's probably harder than it sounds.
Probably it was.
Not enough memory. Those are memory hogs because they're PC-based, and they wanted to sell more memory. So getting that onto an old school phone was probably a bit of a challenge.
So Symbian was running on better hardware than the original Nokia phones, but it was still very resource constrained and lots of gymnastics to get things to work. And but we had some things going our way. Like at the time, there was a project called Mono, which then became Xamarin, which was a .NET open source implementation. So we were able to bootstrap a lot of our code with theirs. It was under MIT license, and that allowed us to have something shippable without having to write every single framework.
My first company did, we were big partners with Visual Studio. We did MFC extensions. I don't know if you remember, that's a little bit before this type of thing, but yeah, I know the Visual Studios folks really well. Fun fact, Visual Studio was started in the Triangle. There was a guy, Brian Handy, not to be confused with Brian Handley. There's two Brians with very similar names.
No, I didn't know that.
And he started this company called One Tree Software. And it was like early GitHub-like branching kind of thing. Microsoft bought it and used that as the foundation for Visual Studio.
Oh, I didn't notice that. I didn't know it came from this area.
Yeah, we're hopefully going to have him on the pod because I don't think a lot of people know that interesting history.
Yeah. But so that startup ended up failing. We raised some money, and there was obviously big market risk, but I completely missed it. Like, I didn't think at the time Sony, Nokia, and the ecosystem had 80% plus of smartphone shipments.
Yep.
And then the rest of the world was more like a BlackBerry. Well, the US was a BlackBerry plus clamshell world. People carried two devices, and then it was almost overnight when iPhone got released. Like, everything changed, and then nobody was worried about writing things for Nokia or Sony Ericsson phones at all. Just the whole momentum changed, and we eventually just shut down the business, and return on capital was left to investors.
What did you learn from that? Like, not that your startup failed, but like this massive thing happened. I remember the time when Jobs did the first iPhone demo, all the Nokia, BlackBerry, they all laughed. They're like, it doesn't have a keyboard. It's terrible at everything. It doesn't, it's not good at phone calls. It's not good at email. They obviously got it wrong.
Yeah, I think that we knew there was market risk. We just, it was one of those binary things, I suppose. We should have got to market faster. I got distracted with VC issues and board management. We spent probably a year being not very constructive in terms of R&D. We were way underfunded. I think probably the lesson I had was, don't raise money for a company that has to be international out of a smaller country without some path to getting that, abroad. Mm-hmm. So we were just undercapitalized from day one. And there still would have been probably a way to get an exit if we got to market quicker. I remember getting some advice from somebody just to open source it, stop trying to license anything, and maybe just sell more of a Red Hat style business model. Mm-hmm. That would have been the best chance of getting broad adoption and probably getting acquired. Yeah. But in the end, the market moved before we could really react, and we had attached our wagon to one bet. Like, there was no way to repurpose the code base.
That happened, and then what'd you do?
We sat around for a while, wondering what to do next. But we figured we wanted to do something in mobile probably, and we played around with a few ideas. And another big lesson was I didn't spend any time thinking about distribution in that first company. It was all just about technical product. That's all we really worried about. So this time we thought we're gonna have some idea of distribution, and we're gonna test out these ideas with the market and willingness to pay before. So we played around with a few ideas. One of the things we saw in that startup was a lot of B2B apps were basically like capturing data in a form, persisting it locally, doing some validation, and then sending it into a server or cloud process. And there was a pattern that kept on repeating in the apps.
So the form was on a mobile device.
Yes.
In this situation.
Yeah.
Got it.
And they were building that app again and again and again for the most part. And that's what they were trying to use our Simian.NET framework to do. So
you did all this thing where you replicated a whole framework and they just built a form.
Right. Yeah. Basically, we had some other developers that were doing really impressive things. Yeah. We had to study their code to understand how they were doing that. But for the most part, it's fairly boring B2B apps. So
this is what's frustrating as a tech founder. You build this whole thing, and then someone the most simple use case, and you're like, I could have done that in 1/80th of the time.
Yeah, there was probably a message.
How are you going to use this?
It was also not a very fun product in the sense that there was no creativity. It was like, well, this is the API that you have to support. There's no wiggle room there. Mm-hmm. And there were some parts of it we didn't support just because of resources. I think at our peak, we were 10 or 12 people. The Microsoft team that was doing the Compact framework, that started with a .NET code base at 30 people. So we always, we had to just be lean and mean and cut things out. But so that was one of the ideas we had for Device Magic. We just Device Magic was just chosen because we think it'll involve mobile devices, and we could find the .com. That was it.
So you started that in South Africa?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That was started in South Africa.
What year?
That was 2011, basically, when we crystallized. We tested out a few ideas. the two others luckily just were so bad that they just failed immediately. And so we continued with what really was a mobile forms product. And we productized that into a platform called Device Magic. And at the time, we were still supporting J2Me Java-based phones as well as BlackBerry. And that's how we went to market. And then we added support for other platforms like Android and iOS as we went.
So then you said 10 years ago you moved to the US. So you start in 2011, and then something makes you move with Device Magic to the United States. What happened there?
Well, I had promised myself not to try and scale another software business in South Africa. Not that it's impossible. There have actually been some great successes of businesses that were started and scaled and sold out of South Africa. But I do think it's like a headwind that is not really worth having. Mm-hmm. So in 2011, we applied to incubator. They claimed to be the first dedicated B2B incubator in Dallas, Texas. Got in, and we spent 3 months there. And that allowed us to kind of reincorporate in the US, move IP.
Was that like a Techstars or something that doesn't exist anymore?
It does exist. It was called Tech Wildcatters. And,
I've heard of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But at the time, that whole model was quite nascent. But yeah, we applied to one. We needed to get some cash to buy the IP, and that's what we used it for. And then we basically became like a US company that had a South African sister company, essentially.
Okay. And you probably had some developers back there, but you and maybe a co-founder were here? Or like
yes, me and my co-founder were in the US, and then the developers there. But that went pretty well, and we learned quite a bit in that incubator. And then we had to return back to South Africa. And then we were kind of just in no man's land for a couple of years trying to figure out how to get back to the US in terms of visas and everything else. So we still had a US go-to-market, but we just couldn't be in the US. But eventually we figured that out. In 2015, I moved on a visa, and my co-founder joined later that year.
Why the Triangle? So you went to Dallas and you said, we need to get to the Triangle. Like, it's interesting you landed here. What was the pull for the Triangle?
This is a very common question I get, which I understand because most people don't move from South Africa to Raleigh, North Carolina.
Yeah, the only other one I know is Grant Kitching, and I'm sure you guys know each other.
We do, yes. I know Grant pretty well.
Yeah, he's been here a long time.
Yeah, a lot longer than me. So what actually happened after that incubator, we attended a conference in San Jose, and I met these guys from a company called Shoeboxed and a bunch of others. Uh-huh. And Taylor Mingos was saying to me, "You got to come and check out this area. There's been some great successes that have been organically grown, B2B SaaS like ShareFile. I'd never heard of these companies. I didn't really even know where Raleigh was. So I said, no, I'll come and check it out. And it took a while, at least a year and a half. And then he kind of assembled this little roadshow of meet some investors, meet some of the local founders, get to learn about the ecosystem. So he was really the reason we came to the Triangle.
Oh, I didn't know that story.
The other reason was, of course we considered New York, SF, probably even Miami, DC, but we were bootstrapping. And besides the money we had raised in the incubator, which was we did $25K from them and about $20K from an angel that I knew. And we just couldn't afford to put ourselves in a market that was twice as expensive, and we'd have to pay ourselves twice as much for no apparent value. Because we weren't trying to raise money. We were trying to do this mostly organically.
Yeah, I think our recruiting brochure should just be a page of San Jose real estate, a page of Austin real estate, and a page of Triangle. The Triangle's grown, and those of us that are here complain about it. But if you put those 3 pages together, first of all, the thing that blows my mind is in California, the yards are square feet. I was like, is that the house? What's going? No, the actual yard is in square feet. That's here we're always on acres, and it's it's so small that you're measured by $1 per square foot of the lot.
Right. Yeah. It's it is very different, and clearly there's advantages to those cities as well. But for what we were doing, I also loved the fact that there were 3 great colleges. So in terms of scaling a sales function, there was plenty of talent around here, and there was this momentum going because of ShareFile. I think was one of the ones that started it, but it took me a while to realize that Epic Games was based here as well. Mm-hmm. So there are quite a few companies that are under the radar that are from this area that I think just don't get as much attention as than they would if they were in a bigger market.
Yeah, and Red Hat, who you mentioned earlier.
Right. Yeah.
So it's 2015. You're here in the Triangle, thanks to the Shoebox guys.
Yeah.
And what happened to Device Magic? Did you stay in forums, or what happened?
Yeah, we stayed in forums. We stuck to that product. At the time, we weren't like really struggling to grow. We had done a couple of organic SEO things based on, I can't remember their names, but they had two people that came into that incubator and taught us a lot about SEO. And that carried us for years. Like we were just doing well in SEO and getting pretty much free leads. So we were growing, like somewhere between 80 to 100% year over year without much effort. And then when I moved to the US, at that stage we really had like a salesperson, a customer support representative, and I think somebody was doing marketing for us.
Yeah. I vaguely remember I discovered you guys on the Tweener list, and I came to your office a couple times, and it was like this third subleased space, like in the RTP area, or like off Aviation Airport. Am I remembering that right? Or was it off Western Parkway?
Our original first office was in Durham at the American Tobacco Campus on 201 West Main Street, and then I moved to Raleigh, and most of our employees were living closer to there anyway. So I think our first base was American Underground, maybe. Okay. But yeah, we were nomadic. We moved to a few different offices.
Yeah. Yeah, and everyone would ask, what are these guys doing? I was like, it's kind of mobile forums, and I don't know exactly what's going on.
Well, that turned out to be quite a problem. Like the lesson of Device Magic was it was very horizontal. It was fine to capture inbound demand, very hard to generate demand with outbound because, if you call up like our ICP and say, we're doing mobile forms, they wouldn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a technology looking for a problem.
But when they have an acute need and they're searching for, all kinds of things like a phone that'll work, a form that'll work on this insert platform name, boom, you guys are, right. That was the power of your SEO, is like being right there at that acute need.
Once it worked out it's called offline forms or mobile forms, then it just became fairly trivial and we'd close deals pretty quickly. But you were constrained and throttled on like, how many searches are taking place with that keyword?
Yeah.
And we didn't really, we weren't really able to expand that surface area that much. We had a lot of word of mouth going. And so, we continued to scale the business and hire organically. And probably around I think it was around 2017 maybe, we started getting some more like strategic inbounds. But we were small, like we were, doing like 1 or 2 million of ARR. And for a number of reasons, they didn't go anywhere. And we sort of just went heads down and continued to grow and leveled up and got more experienced go-to-market leaders. And
did you raise money or you bootstrapped?
No, we continued bootstrapping. Okay. Yeah, we never really found there was an obvious way to deploy the money, like in the sense of millions of dollars and have investors get a return. So we certainly were approached and we considered it, but we didn't have this machine where you could just put money into a marketing channel and it would just work. We'd done multiple tests that had always had middling results. So we never raised anything after that.
I know the end of this story, but how did you get to an exit on Device Magic? Yeah,
so then I think, I don't know, there must be some list or radar you get onto. When you cross a certain revenue threshold, I've been told it's 5 million ARR. When you cross that, you're on some list and everybody knows about it. And
the private equity guys, largely, yeah.
Private equity, growth equity. So I was getting, it felt like once they'd won a day.
About when did you get to 5 million? So you were kind of like slow. Was there some, did you just like tortoise your way there, or was there some inflection point where it kind of took off on you?
No, unfortunately, there's no inflection point. It was just a slow grind.
Hey, just slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, so, and we had like the typical decaying SaaS growth rate, like, so we did 100%, then 80%, then 70%. And maybe there was one year we reversed that into a bit of quicker growth. But it was pretty much just a slow compounding. There was no massive inflection point.
But I bet the churn was pretty low, because if you're the lead gen engine off these mobile forums, you have to really do something bad to get ripped out, because no one wants to. It's got all the tracking. It's injecting into the CRM system. It's all wired up the way they want it. And it's probably relatively low churn.
It was pretty sticky. We always had logo churn. Like we almost were two different businesses. So if people spend like less than $1,000 a year with us, the churn was a completely different profile to the ones that would be more like mid-market. But we always had good net dollar retention. So even though we had a little bit of logo churn, we would always, I think we'd grow like 10% every year just based on existing customer base. So that helped kind of propel us forward. And we're getting all these inbounds, and I didn't take them that seriously because there were so many. And it was always just like, junior analyst. And then K1 Investment Management reached out, and I gave them a little bit more attention because of their pitch, I suppose. And then a few months
Were they private equity or?
They're a private equity firm out of LA. I think like reasonably new. I think their fund was like $2 billion fund. Anyway, they'd impressed me with their like thoughts on the space. They'd clearly done some research on it. And then a few months later, they just announced that they were buying our largest competitor. So that definitely got my attention then. And actually,
did that feel like they had like? Did you feel like they kind of used you a little bit to understand the market, or you went into it knowing that was a possibility and no harm, no foul?
Yeah, I think I've been lucky enough. There's something that's great about this series. There's a very welcoming atmosphere, and people are very willing to help. And I got connected to really great advisors that eventually joined like an advisory board. But yeah, they'd cautioned me, you're going to get pumped for information. That's the point of all those calls. So you spend 15, 20 minutes, get on the call, try and learn as much as you can as well. But expect that this person's filling out a matrix and they're trying to fill out your employee count and revenue and growth rate, etc. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't. I was surprised. Like, wow, okay, you are really serious about the space then.
Yeah.
And then a mentor of mine, Duran, who I'm sure you know as well. He said, well, what on earth are you doing? Like, get on a plane now and go and visit them and meet the partner and see how serious this is. So I did. We almost concluded a deal. And for a couple of reasons, we ended up going our separate ways. And then we were also growing really well at that stage. We had unlocked a few things that were allowing us to grow a bit quicker. And then COVID hit. And we had this period of we had a quarter where I'm not sure we'll be in business anymore.
Yeah.
But we came away pretty unscathed. I think we managed to grow 2%. And then exiting COVID, we started experiencing rapid growth as people realized we can't have all these manual processes that rely on paper being brought back to the office. So we saw huge demand then that suddenly was pent up from COVID. And we re-engaged with K1 and then we concluded a deal.
So they rolled you into that other platform?
Yes, they did, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting they bought were you number 2? So they bought number 1 and number 2?
I don't know. I don't think, in their portfolio, we were, but we were significantly smaller than their sort of anchor platform, Portco. We were a quarter of the size, best case.
Yeah. To the extent you're okay talking about it, was this like one of those 100% buyouts or more like one of those 51% where they try to keep you on for a while? And then any range you can give us of like what kind of outcome that was may help other founders kind of understand things.
Yeah, they didn't do any PR during the acquisition, and that entity, that rolled up entity, just got acquired a couple of months ago. Yeah. So I think they probably won't mind as much. But yeah, it was in the tens of millions of dollars, and there wasn't from the start. They said there's not going to be 100% cash here. You're going to have some rolled stock, which I hated at the time, and. I thought that was awful. But in fact, the rolled stock did really, really, really well.
Is that out now that they had the second kind of the double bang?
Yeah.
Yeah. They sell you on this like double bang. So get some now and then more later. But the more later can always be zero, and you have no control, which as a founder, we like our control.
It was completely scary. And I remember thinking, how does, this is going to go wrong somehow. I just don't know how yet. But yes, it was mostly majority cash and some earnout. And then there was some rolled stock. I would say they undersold what the eventual outcome was going to be.
Good. How long? So you sold what year?
October 20 we sold.
Okay, right, during COVID and then a little COVID-ish. And then when did the second transaction happen? Just recently, or? Yeah,
I think it concluded July 1
of 24.
Yeah, of 24.
Okay,
wow,
so kind of a 4-year role.
Yeah.
Did you work for the company all 4 years?
No, I didn't. I had the earnout, which was actually not that long, and then I ran product. I was chief product officer for a while, and I think it was around May of 22. I left then, and then they just recently announced that transaction. The one that they acquired the whole company. And
did you have inklings, or was it just a happy surprise one day you woke up and this thing you probably had marked to zero was suddenly worth something?
I was getting a couple of odd questions from people that I thought this is a real strange detail to be asking here in like April of 24. But I still stayed in touch with people, and I think there had been discussions and they were either going to buy other companies or they were maybe getting bought. So you never take them too seriously. But I still maintain a good relationship with the GoCanvas CEO, which was the bigger company, our big competitor.
Oh, yeah.
But it was an amazing surprise. It was, I think, a really great deal. So they did PR on that one, and it was a German public company called Nemetschek. Bought them for like 780 million.
Wow. Almost as big as ShareFile. ShareFile's recent transaction with, was it Progress?
Yeah.
850. Yeah. Go Canvas, did they have something here?
Go Canvas was, did they have something in?
Yeah, before they bought you guys, did they have people here? That sounds really familiar to me.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think they did. I think they had somebody running marketing. Yeah. Yeah, they did have a few people in the area.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
But they were also like, we had a more diverse revenue base. There was quite a lot of international revenue. They liked the South African thing that we had some lower cost engineering labor, support labor. So they really scaled up that operation a lot. And I think that helped because the world changed from, I think like 21, where it was just the headline ARR growth multiple. That's all that mattered, to like more of an EBITDA story where you had to be at least, heavily EBITDA positive, or certainly not negative.
Yeah. When they acquired you, were they big on the rule of 40? That's like all the private equity guys love that rule of 40.
Obsessed with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we were too as well. Like, I mean, we were very, for a company, I suppose, as small as us, without like, there was not the structure of VC. So the board meetings were kind of me and my co-founder and then this advisory board. So we had to be obsessed with metrics and like study ourselves as if we were a VC-backed company, because we did eventually want to pursue an outcome. The business was never really profitable. So we were always hoping for an outcome one day, but we just kept on growing. But Rule of 40 was something we were quite obsessed with.
Yeah, and for those listening or watching, Rule of 40 is where private equity firms, they look at your year-over-year growth rate, and then, so let's say you're growing 20%, then they want to see your EBITDA, and those two things as a percent of revenue, those two things added together, the goal is to get to 40 or north of 40. So if you're growing 20%, they want you to be at 20% EBITDA. If you're growing at 30, 10, so on and so forth. Right now, they don't like the inverse of it. They don't like 80% growth minus 40. So like, no, that's no good. So you have to have relatively, I think the minimum on EBITDA they would like is at least 10, maybe 15%. That kind of, right now it's probably pretty conservative. So probably 15 to 20%, because what they do is they use your EBITDA to they leverage up when they do these acquisitions, right? So they're going to go get some debt against that EBITDA. So that's why they like that rule of 40.
Well, I learned a lot from the experience just watching private equity. I think I had a more negative view of private equity, because in the years prior, it was more the traditional, they'll probably pay like 3 to 4x ARR, and it'll be 50% cash, 50% roll. And it's kind of like a middling outcome. It's not a really positive outcome for the common stockholders. But that was not my experience at all. And observing a private equity firm and how they lever up the company, and it's an incredible thing to watch and how well it worked. Yeah. So I learned a lot in that process. But the whole rule of 40 is nice, I think, if you are bootstrapping, because you'd always get compared against a company, where they'd say you need to be tripling every year, but they would never mention, they're tripling, but they EBITDA is like negative 100% or something. Yeah. So the rule of 40 at least keeps you saying like you should be exceeding that if you're a smaller company, but it allowed you to at least compare with, we're not losing cash. So
you should have it you should have line of sight to it, right? So as a bootstrapper, you have to be profitable. So it helps you think through, well, this year I'll be flat, but then you get to kind of like 5%, and then kind of like inch your way there.
And now I think that's just the way forward now for SaaS. But there was a time when EBITDA was almost completely disregarded. Everybody was heavily funded, and capital was cheap, so nobody worried about it. But now I think, as you pointed out, it can't really be. They want to see like 10 or 15%, irrespective of what the growth rate is. So. Yeah.
And the nice thing about bootstrapping is when you have an exit, the waterfall is very simple. It's you and the co-founders. Did you have an employee stock option pool?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So so it's founders, employees, and that's it. So
we actually even had, in the early days, we couldn't really afford to pay people salaries sometimes, and we said, look, we can pay you in common stock. So there were a couple of early employees that just had common. But it was mostly held internally. I think the angel and institution were like 10 to 12% combined.
Yeah. Like the accelerator, the Maverick people, whatever they're called. Yeah. Wildcats. Okay. So then you left in 2022.
Yeah.
What do you? I see you at investor meetings, so I know you're an LP in some of the funds around town, and you've been doing some angel investing.
Yeah. I was a little bit burnt out. It was quite a long journey, and there was so much riding on that company that it took me a while to realize, okay, that actually was pretty stressful, because there were times when, my income depends on this company. My presence in the United States depends on this company, And oh, by the way,
because you were on a H-1B visa,
I was on an L1, which is like a transfer visa, which is a lot nicer, or it's got many advantages to an H-1B. But at that stage, I wasn't a permanent resident yet, so everything was like hanging on this. And yeah, like if this failed, I like rounded down to 0. Basically, after the exit, and I'd spent some time working there, I thought I just need to take some time off and not try and have any goal in mind.
So you went crazy, got a Ferrari, got some gold chains. I can see you've got like a razzle dazzle too.
Yeah,
no, that's not your style.
Better that I didn't comment on all of that. But yes, I did enjoy getting some nice things. And I started playing with AR, VR, AI, a little bit of robotics. Yeah. But there was no like goal in mind. It was just tinker with whatever is of interest at the time. Like wake up every day and say, today I'm going to play with that, or read this, or
did you have an early Oculus? Do you have the whole family of Oculi or Oculuses?
No, I didn't. I went straight to like a HP headset. I think the Reverb G2. So I did that. Spent too much time playing flight simulators and just enjoying, like having no real objective in mind.
Yeah. Do you have an Apple Vision Pro?
I don't know. Yeah,
I think you would like it. Don't believe the reviews. It's pretty good. From an AR VR enthusiast, it's pretty amazing.
Okay.
Yeah. The see-through AR stuff's really nice.
Yeah, I need to play around with that. I then sort of got stuck into AI and kept on learning more about that. And I haven't really got back into AR VR, but...
yeah, you can take interactive, I think they call them interactive photos from your phone. And then when you watch them, like if you go on a vacation or something, it's really cool to put yourself back into the picture. It's kind of like, one of the sci-fi Minority Report type of, remember when he's watching it was his son and he's watching the movie and it's kind of like around him. It gets pretty close to that. It's pretty wild.
Well, you convinced me to check it out. Yeah, I suppose I did believe, the reviews weren't great. Yeah. And it's hard to imagine like wearing that in public or on a commute or something.
For certain people that can afford it, it's good. It's like not for them. If getting a new phone is kind of a big budget thing for you, then you probably should not get one. So
I took some time off, didn't really have much going on, and I started playing with AI. I did some consulting for another sovereign company that was trying to do a go-to-market in the US. Mm-hmm. But then, the AI was just exploding, and I wanted to get back into it. And I raised a friends and family round, and I've jumped back in. And Taylor, who introduced me to the area, is a co-founder, and we're working.
It's kind of a full circle moment.
Yeah, it is. It's great to be working with Taylor. So I've known him for so long, and we kind of figured we'd work well together. So yeah, it's a crazy space, but it's nice to be building something again.
Yeah. So you're poking around in AI. I've been doing a lot of exploration there. Can you say like what you're working on?
We're still in stealth, but it's Gen AI and it's a B2B application. I'll leave it at that for now, but hopefully in a couple of weeks we have something to show. It's quite a hotly contested space, or maybe not contested, but it's very busy, and we want to figure out a differentiation and exact positioning. But I think we'll have something soon.
It's an interesting topic that we're going to do a lot on here. Let me ask you a couple more questions, and then we can spend a little time on that. It's interesting, your story. A lot of the folks were kind of from here, or like me, have been here for like 30 years. You're kind of 10 years into it, and you're an immigrant, which is awesome. What was it like to come to the Triangle? How did our startup ecosystem? I mean, you weren't in San Jose long, but like obviously compared to South Africa, and then maybe some of the people that were on your advisory board, you like to give a shout out to, just so other people kind of see. We'll help other founders like this advisory board. Say a little bit more about that. Did you do like the quarter point kind of thing, like a Silicon Valley type, where you gave them a little bit of equity, or was this just kind of they all volunteered? And how many people do you have on there, and like how did you use them? Help people kind of understand that. I think that's an interesting topic that I get asked a lot about. Yeah,
for sure. Well, I think the first thing, it was eye-opening to me. So I always wanted to move to the US. It wasn't that I wanted to leave South Africa per se. I always wanted to move to the US. I wasn't considering other countries.
It was a pull, not a push.
Right. Yeah. And part of it's been, the access to capital, the, how much it rewards, like, growth and software and innovation. But I was a bit astounded to see just how big things were in terms of like the amount of capital and how big even North Carolina is, in terms of just the companies that are here and how big the sort of mid-sized companies are throughout the US. So that was pretty eye-opening. I haven't lived in those other markets long enough to compare. I would say, like Dallas, Texas, and Raleigh, North Carolina, at least at that time, seemed like they were of equivalent sizes in terms of venture capital markets and new companies. Now I would imagine that Raleigh's way past that. But yeah, I can't really compare it to the Bay Area. But I had a lot of mentors and advisors along the way. I try to give them equity. Some refused. Jess Lipson was actually like a really, really great mentor. Informal. He wasn't actually ever on an advisory board, but he helped me a lot.
How'd you get connected to Jess?
I think actually there was a time when like Citrix was thinking about doing something in mobile form space, and one of their corp dev people reached out and
Christianza?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's quite an intimidating guy.
Yeah, he's intense.
He's pretty intense. I remember that meeting quite
I have to
well.
have like a very large Starbucks before I meet with Christianza, because I know it's going to be a whirlwind of a discussion.
We probably knew people in common, and we sort of got acquainted then during that time.
So it was in the Citrix era.
Yes, it was in the Citrix era. But besides that, I had another mentor who was a board advisor, Vinny, who had moved from South Africa to the US. So he kind of pioneered that whole journey, like how you set up the companies, how you do the IP, how you do the transfer visa. So I was kind of just following in his footsteps. He had laid out that whole blueprint already. And then there were Peter Bourne and Bruce Boehm that probably more in the latter years helped me a lot with go-to-market and some product refinement. But there was a lot of help along the way. Like, I mean, I came here, I knew like one person, but the community is very welcoming. People trying to help you, they're excited about what you're doing. Of course, they're fascinated that you moved from South Africa to North Carolina. That was always a very...
Yes, you're an anomaly. Your accent's amazing. Yeah. I remember I went to Grant Kitching worked for me at Channel Advisor, and we went to a trade show, and I got a wedge salad, and it's a blue cheese wedge salad.
Yeah.
And he kept asking me, "What is a wedge salad?" And I was like, "They take the lettuce and they make a wedge." And he's like, "What?" And then it came, and he's like, "Oh, a wedge." And I was like, "It's the same word." He's like, "No, that's a wedge." And I was like, "Okay, it's a wedge."
Yeah. Well, the struggle is real coming with his accent, because I think people are also very polite here. So I realized that when I made US friends, 50% of the time they didn't know what I was saying.
Yeah.
And eventually they said, we don't know what you're saying most of the time. We're just nodding our heads.
Yeah.
And now they've learned the accent, or I've been able to slightly change intonation to make it more digestible. But it is really weird coming to another English-speaking country, and there's certain things you would mention or say, and you just get these puzzle expressions, and I can't, an example doesn't come to mind now, but
yeah, my favorite is when you're literally saying the same word, but like you don't understand each other. It's like what was going on there?
Oh, yeah, I get that a lot. Most of the people that have known me a while now have been exposed to other South African accents. So
yeah,
but it's less of a problem actually in like New York or LA or SF. I think they're just used to different accents, or maybe like the South African accent's closer to British, so they're exposed to that. Whereas around here, like, you can definitely see some strange reactions when you first open your mouth.
Yeah, it always presents to me as more Australian or New Zealand, and I have to kind of like listen carefully, and then I can kind of tell. You mentioned Duran. How did you meet him? Was this when he was at Samanage?
This was at Samanage. I was doing a reference check on account exec, Adam, and he had provided another South African as a reference who was his boss, but maybe didn't work at the company anymore. He had moved to Pinehurst. I think it was Daryl Bestase. And he said, you would get along well with Duran. You should meet up with him. So I said, okay. He made an intro. I show up at the Samanage office. I'm trying to find Duran. All the like meeting rooms are named after Scotch distilleries.
Yeah.
So I immediately think, okay, I think I'm getting along well with this guy. And then we spent so much time, we were playing like the points and miles game. Like we were obsessed with that. Well, we still are. And I couldn't believe I'd found somebody that was as obsessed, and I was learning a lot from him. So yeah, we spoke about that for like hours. Yeah. We just hit it off immediately. Yeah, he's been great. He's more like more of an informal advisor / mentor, but he taught me a lot, and
he's very succinct and to the point. Like you'll have a conversation and say, "You need to do this." He's very good at summarizing things in a very succinct way.
Yeah. Incredibly laconic. And like, I remember I would ask him these questions and be a whole rambling question. It's $100,000. I said, well, I haven't even finished. He said, it's $100,000. That's what it is. That's the answer. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
Was he right? Yeah, he's right.
Yeah, he does that all the time, and he's the one who prompted me, like, get on the plane and go and have the conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's very direct, and it's something unique about him that forced me to, I would always, when I would meet with him, I'd say like, well, I'm pretty sure what I should be thinking about. And I'd go away thinking, nope, you're completely wrong about that. I learned a lot.
Yeah. Let's talk about AI a little bit in the abstract sense. You've got your startup over here, Super Stealth. We're not going to talk about that. A couple topics that fascinate me. Number one is like, my AI journey went from like playing around with some of the co-pilot-y kind of things where they kind of like give you a productivity boost in the 20 or 30% if you're a developer or whatnot. Then I came across the framework, which is retrieval augmented generation, where you kind of marry the traditional database you and I are familiar with an LLM, and you get this really interesting, less hallucinations, more vertical oriented kind of results, and more chronologically more current data. So that's really interesting. And then the one that's been really interesting is, and when we're recording this in October of 24, less than 30 days ago, OpenAI came out with O1, and that's more of an agentic. So these agents, and what they've done there is they've trained one agent on how to think through big picture processes, and it's a coordinating kind of orchestrating agent, and then it has little worker agents, which would be the normal chat GPTs. So, what we're seeing is there's companies like Klarna where they're saying they used to have 5,000 in people. Now they've gotten rid of a bunch of it's really not gotten rid of, but they've had churn naturally bring this down. So now they're at, I think, half of that headcount, and they can see it going to like 1,000 or something. And they've slowly but surely got these agents that are doing most of the customer service. They're doing a lot of credit checking, a lot of these processes that used to be very much, take a number, put it in here, move it here, kind of like, information workers can be automated with these agents, and they talk to each other and do interesting things. And now they're working on the engineering team. And then they announced they're going to get rid of some of these big SaaS applications, specifically Salesforce and Workday, and just build their own because they think they can do that cheaper with this augmented engineering team versus the SaaS licensing. So that's been part of my journey in kind of thinking through this. It's really fascinating. Oh, and then just the last one is Jensen, the CEO of NVIDIA, just this week was on one of the podcasts, and he talked about, he sees, I think they have 25,000 people now. He sees a day where they'll have 35,000 human employees and 200,000, AI agent employees, basically kind of augmenting what those people do. It's like a really interesting, as a multiple time founder, it's really interesting to think about, all right, I'm going to have these human employees and these kind of like AI employees, and they're going to work together, and that's going to give me all this leverage. The extreme of that is in Silicon Valley, they talk about the single person unicorn. Will this get to the point where, let's say Dusan's 6 company, it's just you and an idea and like this army of AI agents. What do you think about all those topics? Is that poppycock or whatever the right South African word is, or what do you think about all those topics?
Well, yeah, there was a lot there. I mean, I followed AI for many, many years, way before like LLMs. I didn't follow it intensely, but always kept an eye on it. I've been fascinated with it since watching 2001 and multiple
Space
other.
Odyssey.
Right, yeah. So like I
Yeah.
always was.
What's the big the monolith?
Right. Yeah. I was fascinated by the topic. And TEL 9000, etc., and all the science fiction references. So I was really excited when some of this stuff started coming to fruition. But it's funny, like I stay in touch with ex-MIT computer science and AI lab grad, and he was like not impressed at all with what LLMs are doing. And he said, I don't see any path for this to go to AGI, artificial general intelligence. But I mean, it really is impressive, like what's going on, considering that. And this is probably a gross oversimplification, but it's just predicting the next token.
Yeah.
And what that actually manifests in is astounding. Yeah, I don't know about the single person unicorn, but it does feel to me that this is as big as, or bigger than internet and mobile, which were absolutely colossal. But I think this one will be more, it's going to displace some roles entirely and change the way some aspects of work are done. But like my own exploration, I just try to build something simple with like a vector DB. You were mentioning RAG, and it was just uploading like a bunch of PDFs, actually like quarterly statements, and being able to interrogate an AI and say, what is the revenue from this product line in third quarter 23?
Yep.
And it's really, what you can build. And now building this new company, I'm doing coding again, which is nice.
Cool.
But
are you using Cursor or just VS?
I'm just using VS Code with GitHub Copilot.
Yeah.
But and then I have ChatGPT as well on the side. But what used to take, it felt like days to figure out.
Yeah, in the .NET days, you get stuck, and you would be like, you'd have to get a book. So you had a wall of books, and you get the book off. You couldn't find it there. Then you go to a Usenet group, and you'd post, and you'd wait, and then no one would answer for days. Then you'd like say help. Then you'd call Microsoft and get to level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and then finally someone would answer your question. It was like a 2-week journey if you got stuck on something.
It was just so much like boilerplate code had to be written by hand. I think it's still helpful if you have some background in software development and computer science, because your prompt will be that much better. Mm-hmm. So you have to give it some direction. But once you've given it some direction, like the days of writing a whole lot of boilerplate code is gone, and the code's maybe not optimized, but it's better than I would have written it. Yeah. And it can refine itself so quickly. I think like Stack Overflow was a big moment for developer productivity, when at least you could find an answer pretty quickly, and it was voted, and you'd be somewhat certain that is the correct answer. But this is just a game changer for that specific aspect of software development. So I do think that there's still going to be the even increased importance for like incredible coders. But the kind of junior entry level thing where you're just pumping out boilerplate code and tests and things like that, I think that's all gone now.
Yeah. When you're writing code, 80% of it is kind of grunt work, kind of like template-y. Then 20% is like novel, creative. So it's going to be nice to just really focus on that and have the AI do the other. Yeah, and if it does the novel part, then you and I are out of a job.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, but in terms of like worrying about syntax and reference documentation, like that, you just don't have to think about that. I mean, if you've got some familiarity with a couple of different languages, then you'll immediately follow the syntax, and you're not having to write any of that yourself. And it's cut and paste, and it even helps you with debugging, which is incredible. Mm-hmm. So if you like, I'm sure you do this too. You prompt it to say, well, I think there's a bug that you've introduced in this line. Something's not quite right. This variable's not being set correctly. It'll then spit out another iteration that fixed it.
Yeah. Yeah, I had this, like, I was dealing with a government agency, and they gave me like a 60-page document. I scanned it in a PDF. I loaded it in O1, and it was complicated because it had weird columns, and the data was just like totally disaster. It wasn't something I could just like pull OCR out of the PDF. And it kept doing it wrong, and I kept telling it how to correct O1. And ultimately, it was like, you're right, I was wrong. And then it would like go correct it. And then at the end, it like said, I'm done with the CSV. Do you want it? And it took like 4 prompts to kind of get there. It would have taken me weeks to, or you'd have to send it to like India and have someone transcode it or something. It's amazing, like that it can think like that.
I think you were mentioning just in terms of like finding something on a web page or in a PDF document it was obviously trivial to understand, but very fragile code to write.
Yeah.
To figure out the DOM and get to a certain element. Oh, yeah. Or pass a PDF and understand that structure. Now it's just, please tell me what it said in this box. Mm-hmm. And then answer gets spat out immediately. Yeah. So yeah, I think like sitting for coding, it's already changed almost everything. It's going to be interesting to see what other like functions are displaced or made greatly more efficient. But it's hard to tell. Like I think initially they thought legal would be very subject to displacement by AI. I don't know that that's happened as much as people expected.
Hallucinations are really bad in the legal world. That and in the medical world, they have much bigger consequences than a B2B SaaS app.
Right. Yeah. That's
If someone calls the wrong number, we'll be okay or something. Or they, the product's not described entirely right within reason. If it's the wrong price, that can be done that before. So we got like 2 more minutes. What are some? So this is from founders for other founders. You're kind of, I don't know how you count, but was Device Magic? It feels like startup maybe like number 1, 2, or 3, somewhere in there.
Probably 2. I'd say.
Yeah, so 2. So now you're working on number 3. What would you say to first-time founders? Like, what are some lessons learned that you would share if some 22-year-old was fresh out of school and said, "Hey, Dusan, what are some tips? What's your answer?"
So mine are going to be biased due to the mistakes I made. So this may not be like
that's what makes it interesting. You have a good list.
I would say like worry about distribution as early as possible because like we're now in a place where with AI, you can pretty much write any B2B SaaS app, like you mentioned, climate replacing Salesforce on Workday. Mm-hmm. If that can be done with that quickly, most applications that are line of business or vertical, you can write it. It's going to be distribution and what's the cost of customer acquisition. That's going to be probably a limiting factor. And I would also say like, probably be cautious with VC and like what the outcome expectation is. And like once you sort of sign up for that journey, you can't really like detach from that journey. So think about the kind of outcome and maybe, work backwards. But yeah, I'd say distribution, was a huge thing that I didn't think enough about. It still comes down to, and I've read this so many times, like most of the reasons startups fail is because you're building something nobody wants.
Yep.
So I would also, especially like in a B2B thing, I think it's different for consumer, but like maybe consumer, you have to just think ahead and nobody's going to describe the problem well enough for you to build a product like that. Mm-hmm. But in the B2B space, they may not use the right nouns, but the buyer completely understands what they want solved. So better to like test that out early. Maybe not going like full lean startup, but I would invest more time in figuring out that you're building something people want, because that's the first issue. The next one is distribution. And then like the rest of it you can fix. You can always solve that later. You can always hire a great VP of sales. You can hire a great marketer. But if those two problems are not solved, then it's just really difficult.
Yeah. And as a tech founder, we don't really want to worry about distribution. We want to build something kind of fun. But even the best mousetrap doesn't sell itself. That's the hard part, is getting it. There's so much noise and people have so many options and things they can look at, and getting in front of them is just, what you're calling distribution is the hardest part.
Yeah, and we'd always in Device Magic wanted to find some like viral distribution mechanism. We never came up with one that worked when we tried a couple. But yeah, like figuring out the growth channels is essential, and at least the CEO has got to be obsessed with that. Maybe the CTO doesn't have to be, and he or she can obsess with the product. But yeah, I definitely didn't spend enough time on that, and it doesn't mean that that's impossible, but it's harder to scale quickly if you don't have a real idea of who the buyer is, what problem you're solving, because it just reduces any capability to do outbound. Mm. And actually, maybe that's another good test. If you're doing like B2B, try and outbound it. Like try and get some meetings booked with outbound. Mm-hmm. And if you find that I don't even know who to call, I don't know what their job title is, I don't know what problem we're solving, well, then that's probably worth fixing first before building anything.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Dusan. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I've learned a ton of stuff about your background, so it's awesome to hear, and thanks for sharing your stories with our listeners and viewers.
Great. Thanks. It was awesome to be here.
Thanks.
For more Tweener content, check out the Triangle Tweener Time Substack at tweener.substack.com. For more Tweener content, check out tweenertimes.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again soon on Triangle Tweener Talks.